what does this all mean for your patients? What's the difference between this and this? Well, just about everything. One of these technologies has providers charging over $100 per session, and it's actually worth it. The other has providers charging only $75 per session. One is treating patients in 5-minute sessions, allowing them to walk away from their first session feeling 10 to 30% better. The other has you treating patients for up to 30 minutes, hoping they'll feel something by visit number 4. Now, I want to start by saying both of these devices can help patients. I want to be clear about that. But here's what really blew my mind about these two devices. They create energy in completely different ways. I'll explain exactly how the difference works in just a second. And that difference, it changes everything about your results and your pricing. And if you're considering shockwave therapy for your clinic, then keep watching for the next 10 minutes, because once you understand how these devices affect the body at the cellular level, you'll understand why clinics using StemWave are reporting clinical breakthroughs that other systems can't replicate. Now, let's start with electromagnetic devices. They're essentially like a really good microwave. They use something called electromagnetic induction to generate energy. This is a process where magnetic fields create vibrations that eventually build up enough energy to create therapeutic effects. It's a multi-step process. Energy goes in, bounces around, builds up, and then hopefully creates the healing response you want. But here's the key. Some electromagnetic devices produce pressure waves, and some produce shock waves. But even these high-end electromagnetic devices that say they produce shock waves don't produce shock waves like StemWave. StemWave uses something called electrohydraulic generation to generate true shock waves almost instantly. This is the same mechanism used in things like military-grade underwater applications. And the way it works is very simple. We quite literally create an underwater explosion. StemWave creates an electrical spark underwater between two electrodes. This vaporizes water, creating an explosive bubble. And that bubble explosion then immediately generates true shock waves. One step, instant shock waves. Zero conversion process. This allows for higher peak pressures, faster rise times, and a unique biological effect compared to other shockwave systems, even electromagnetic ones. That's the overall difference in how these two devices generate energy. However, let's go further into the deep science behind true electrohydraulic shockwave, which is exactly what powers StemWave. It's probably best to start off by defining what a true shockwave is, because that's the key difference here. A true shockwave isn't just a sound wave. True shockwaves typically feature very fast rise times, often measured in nanoseconds, which helps create high peak pressures and unique biological effects. StemWave's technology achieves this rapid energy release in under 10 nanoseconds. That's why our StemWave device generates shockwaves at over 3,500 miles per hour. That's nearly 5 times the speed of sound. And that speed and pressure, well, it matters more than you might think, because it generates true shockwaves every time. And it's what makes rapid healing at the cellular level actually possible. Some, not all, electromagnetic devices generate shockwaves, but they won't do it in anywhere near 10 nanoseconds. Now, StemWave works through something called Mechanotransduction. I know, big word. All that means it's the conversion of mechanical stimulus, shockwaves, into biomechanical signals. Think of it as cellular communication. When we hit tissue with a true shockwave, the cells send messages throughout the body, telling the body that it's injured. The body believes these messages and rushes in with its repair system, even though no actual damage occurred. So the body essentially starts healing itself, and that's how regeneration starts. Electromagnetic devices, however, well, they vary widely. Some produce pressure waves, which create gentler tissue stimulation over a broader area and often require multiple sessions for noticeable results, and others generate focused shock waves, which can stimulate biological responses similar to electrohydraulic shock waves, but it's not the same. The instant effect that you get with StemWave is one of a kind. Now, let me show you exactly what happens inside your patient's tissue when they experience a true instant shockwave. First, there's an immediate decrease in pain and inflammation. StemWave's technology shuts it down at the cellular level, stopping the pain signals at their source, which is why patients feel results almost immediately. And that's why they leave their first session already feeling 10 to 30% improvement, as reported by over 750 doctors. That's pretty good if you ask me. Now, the second major effect is called macrophage conversion. There are two responses involved in this, M1 or macrophage 1 and M2. To put it simply, your body's immune system has cells called macrophages. Think of them like your body's cleanup crew. Normally, when you're injured, they're in attack mode, causing inflammation and pain. This is the M1 reaction. StemWave flips the switch and puts them in repair mode instead, which is the M2 reaction. So the same cells do totally different jobs because of our true shockwave response. This shuts down pain and inflammation while accelerating the healing process. And this is very unique to true shockwave. We can rapidly convert macrophage activity unlike any other device, meaning your patients experience faster healing with less inflammation. Electromagnetic pressure waves create some tissue stimulation, but they don't trigger this immediate conversion. The process is slower and more gradual. StemWave's electrohydraulic shockwaves deliver high peak pressures and a unique mechanical impact that accelerates macrophage conversion. And last, but certainly not least, the third effect, stem cell activation via toll-like receptor 3. To put it simply, after the tissue is hit with the true shockwave, your patient's body will start to recruit stem cells to rebuild damaged tissue. But you have to remember, true shockwave doesn't damage cells. They trick them. These shockwaves compress the cell at such high speed and pressure that the cell thinks it's injured. So it leaks something called messenger RNA. The messenger RNA is essentially a distress signal. This signal brings in your body's stem cells, which build new blood vessels and fix damaged tissue. Now, don't get me wrong. Electromagnetic devices absolutely have their place in clinical practice. They work well for many conditions and have helped thousands of patients. Some of them even produce shockwaves, as we've discussed. But when you're dealing with those complex musculoskeletal cases every day, the frozen shoulders, chronic knees, stubborn back pain, that's where these scientific differences become very important. Plus, on paper, electromagnetic devices can reach up to 12.5 centimeters deep. Sounds great, right? I mean, that's pretty deep. But here's what they probably haven't told you. Most electromagnetic devices get that depth by squeezing all their energy into this tiny focal point. We're talking 2 to 3 millimeters wide. It's like trying to paint a wall with a laser pointer. Sure, the light goes exactly where you point it, but you're only hitting one tiny spot at a time. Now here's what StemWave does differently. We also penetrate up to 12 centimeters deep. But instead of that laser pointer approach, think of it more like a floodlight. We deliver energy across a broader therapeutic zone, several centimeters wide. Our focal zone is actually 2 to 3 times larger than most competitors. Now, you might be thinking, if wider is better, why not go super wide with your focal zone? Well, the problem is if you go too broad with your focal zone, like some other devices out there, the energy gets so spread out, it loses its therapeutic effect. That's why we've engineered StemWave with the perfect focal zone in mind. Not too narrow, not too broad, but just right. So that means you're not just poking at the inflammation with a needle, you're surrounding it and attacking it from all angles. Now, let's bring this back to what matters most. What does this all mean for your patients? With electromagnetic devices, here's what typically happens. Some protocols require multiple sessions per week, with each session taking up to about 30 minutes, depending on which specific device you go for. And the reason why is very simple. An average electromagnetic device session uses 3,000 shockwaves on average. Yeah, 3,000. And if you compare that to StemWave, one session with our device uses an average of 500 shockwaves. That's why sessions with a StemWave device usually take 5 to 10 minutes max. And get this, patients are reporting 10 to 30% improvement after one session. By the end of a typical 8 to 12 session protocol, we're seeing 80% to 95% improvement, even on those complex chronic cases that have tried everything else. That's why we're seeing a 98% success rate with our device across all practices. And the electrohydraulic shockwaves we use in our StemWave technology are reeling in results like these every single week for providers all across the country. Now, let's talk about what this all means for your bottom line. Because when you can deliver up to 30% improvement on the first visit, when your patient conversion jumps from 50% to 70%, the financial impact compounds dramatically. So let me break this down with real numbers. If you see 1,000 patients over 5 years with an electromagnetic device at 50% conversion, that's 500 patients completing care at maybe $50 to $75 per session. But with StemWave's technology delivering immediate results, you're looking at 700 patients converting at $150 to $200 per session. That's literally 2 times the revenue from the same patient flow. And here's why the science we just covered makes this possible. Because patients feel up to 30% improvement on day 1. They trust the process immediately. They complete their care plans. And if you're really good, they'll refer family and friends, which means they're willing to pay premium prices for premium results. Our providers regularly charge $1,500 to $2,500 for complete treatment protocols because when you can deliver true regenerative healing, not just symptom management, patients see the value and they pay for that. And we make it easy to get patients started on these full treatment protocols with our proven $49 mapping session. This low-cost first visit with the StemWave device lets patients actually feel that improvement. And once they experience real results on day 1, converting them to the full protocol becomes almost effortless. Compare that to some electromagnetic devices where providers often struggle to charge more than $75 per session because the results are slower, less dramatic, and patients question the value. It's basic economics. Better outcomes lead to higher perceived value, which leads you to being able to charge a premium. And that's exactly why practices using StemWave report $5,000 to $25,000 increases in monthly collections. The science doesn't just explain the clinical difference, it explains the financial difference. Now, let's get something straight. StemWave isn't the cheapest option out there, and frankly, it shouldn't be. It's kind of like the argument of having a Corolla versus having a Ferrari. Both will get you from point A to point B, but it depends on how you do it. Look, here's the thing about electromagnetic devices. You're gonna like them. They work. They help patients. But you're not gonna love them. You're gonna like them just enough that you won't have to change anything. And that's almost the problem, isn't it? Getting a device that's good enough means you'll never know what exceptional feels like. And when you run the numbers over 5 years with electromagnetic devices at lower conversion rates and lower pricing versus StemWave's higher conversions and premium pricing, electromagnetic devices don't really make sense. StemWave costs more upfront, but when you can charge $150 to $200 per session instead of $50 to $75, when you convert 70% of patients instead of 40%, when patients complete their care plans because they actually feel results, that's not an expense. That's just an investment in building the practice you actually dreamed about. So if you're currently using an electromagnetic device and wondering how you could handle those tougher cases that don't respond, or if you're considering adding Shockwave to your practice and want to understand the real differences between your options, click the link in the description and schedule a discovery call with one of our StemWave advisors. They'll walk you through exactly how this technology works in practices like yours, show you the specific ROI our providers are seeing, and explain how you can try StemWave in your clinic with zero upfront investment. Whether you're looking to upgrade your current approach or add regenerative therapy for the first time, this conversation will give you the clarity you need to make the right decision for your practice. I'll see you on the next one.